All right. Hello, hello, hello. We need to put up your screen on your end.
Oh, my bad. Here we go.
That's all right. All right, here we are. Okay. All right, welcome to the Full Send Half Mast podcast, episode number 3. My name is Jay.
I'm Tom.
And we are going to be talking about this weekend's races. We had the 12-hour Sebring. We also had the Atlanta NASCAR races, and we also had the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix for Formula One. First of all, we're gonna get into some some news coming through this last week. First of all, Harvick showed off his upcoming paint scheme for the NASCAR Sprint Cup All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, throwing back to his original win at RCR at Atlanta. I think this is a really awesome paint scheme. Really encapsulates his career, and it's a good throwback to go back to the original number.
Absolutely.
Also, this today and tomorrow they are doing a tire test at North Wilkesboro for the trucks and cup cars that'll be racing there on that All-Star weekend. Corey Heim in the trucks. Ford selected Zane Smith, and Chevy selected Carson Hocevar. And in the Cup Series, Chevy selected Austin Dillon, Ford selected Chris Buescher, and Tyler Reddick for Toyota. So we'll see. It's a closed off to the public, so we won't really get any footage or any information on that as it comes, but that's just something to keep note of. Also being announced was Cameron Lawrence is going to be making a start at COTA this weekend for MBM in the Xfinity Series. He is a former Rolex 24 winner and a GTD champion in IMSA, so he should be competitive in that race, you would hope. So first off, we're going to start with the races this weekend. The first one to go over will be the Sebring 12 hours race. This was a great race. The GTP class, very competitive. You had Penske with their two champions. You had BMW. You had Cadillac with Nassi and Whelen Cadillac Racing. And then you also had the Wayne Taylor Andretti team with Acura. And overall, it was a great race. Pretty competitive throughout. It looked like for the first 11 hours of this race, it was going to be a Cadillac team that was going to win. They were very strong. Ganassi had Sebastian Bourdais, Van der Zand, and Scott Dixon racing for them. They ended up having some reliability issues. I believe they lost an engine with about 4 hours to go in the race. But before that, they were pretty much dominating this race. It looked like it was their race to lose. And also, you had Cadillac Racing up there competing for the win early on. And then once the nighttime came with about an hour to go, you saw the Penske Porsches making a run towards the lead, and they actually took control of this race at one point. And we got to an absolutely thrilling finish. The clip that we're about to show is just incredible.
To say the least.
It's just you run a 12-hour race and you get down to a point here at the end. I think it was with about 19 minutes to go in the race. We'll let the clip run. I mean, if you haven't seen it, this is awesome. So we'll let the clip run right now. Carnage. Absolute carnage on the going with about 19 minutes to go in the race. Just absolutely wild. We had Jaminet leading for Penske's team. They're late, and then you had the Wayne Taylor entry with Acura, driven by Albuquerque, making a run at him in the dark. You could see Jaminet was in lap traffic, and Albuquerque essentially makes a move to the inside on a very like blind corner in the dark. You have a lot going on, go through lap traffic. Jean-Minet, I don't think he saw Albuquerque make the move and basically ran him off the track. He slides, loses control, and slides back into the track, slams into Jean-Minet, and then he takes out the other Penske Porsche of Nazar as well. And so essentially your top three are taken out with 19 minutes to go in the race.
Yeah, and Albuquerque, I believe he was the faster car. I mean, he was fast all race long, and he was contending. That team was contending for pretty much all race long. And I mean, honestly, in that area, making moves like that, I understand it's 19 minutes, but it's just one of those parts of the track where you just don't do that. I don't know what he's thinking. And then to take out the top three is just crazy to me.
Wild finish. I mean, I feel like you got to put the blame a little bit on both drivers in this scenario. You've got going through lap traffic. I mean, you have to be aware of what's going on. The race is cranking up. I mean, they obviously had to have told him that Albuquerque was coming behind him, coming fast. I mean, granted, it probably wasn't a good spot for Albuquerque to make a move. It's kind of like he kind of just shot his shot right there and was like, I'm going to make this move happen or I'm going to lose the race doing it. And it just ultimately race incident. I mean, they both were not racing with their heads and they were racing with little less caution and ultimately cost all of them a chance at the win.
I think if he would have waited 4 hours, which in this case is probably about 10 more seconds, he could have easily made that overpass around some lap traffic and actually made it work for him. But unfortunately, you saw what happened. They get collected. Top 3 is out. Jack Aiken then goes on, who was in 4th place, who also won the pole for the event. He goes on to win the race, and only 2 GTP cars finished the race.
Yeah, BMW.
That is wild.
Yeah, BMW had just absolute reliability issues. I think the BMW the second BMW team ended up finishing second, but they were just so far off the pace. And the primary BMW team, they had reliability issues. It really, throughout the bulk of this race, it looked like it was between the Ganassi Cadillac and then the Whelen Cadillac Racing team, and then you have to throw in the Wayne Taylor Andretti entry because they were also really fast. It was really those three. The Penske Porsches did not come in until the dark. Like once it got dark, nighttime, they became a factor in that race, and they almost stole it. But I feel like ultimately the best team ended up winning. It just is a difficult situation to be in for the other teams. You can see the disappointment in the teams after this wreck. It was wild.
And we got a lot of good racing through the GTP class, and I mean, awesome racing by the GTP. It was awesome racing by the GTD and the GTD Pro. Sorry, LMP3 class was kind of dismal, but the LMP2 class, I'd like to talk about that for a second because what an embarrassing showing. I mean, it was almost like every wreck that we saw from that race weekend at Sebring. Other than the one that we just shown, were wrecks from the LMP2 class. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure the GTP class before this year, or possibly last year, was non-existent, and all of these teams raced in LMP2, and it was a extremely competitive class, and now that it's kind of just turned into that, I'd be a little embarrassed. I don't know. Well, what do you think?
I mean, I feel like it was a competitive race. I mean, really, the GTP really kind of put on the majority of the show. Like you had the best drivers running in that class alone, the best teams, and I mean, it was really competitive. And it came down to the end, and they put on the show. They made the show at the end with the wreck, but I mean, as competitive goes, I mean, really, the LMP2 class was just not competitive at all. I think you had on lap 1, one of the LMP2 cars was backwards in turn 1, And when the GTD and the GTD Pro classes went, I mean, he's sitting in the middle of the track. It was like a Walmart parking lot out there. These guys are dodging and swerving, and none of them wrecked. It blew my mind. I could not imagine sitting in that car backwards, facing the entire field coming at you, and just the fear in that man's body at that moment would have just, wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, somehow nobody else wrecked. And I mean, the other classes ran competitive. It was really, even the GTP class was competitive. In typical endurance races, you have people run off the track or make contact or have incidences that lose them time throughout the race. It's a 12-hour race. Obviously, you're going to lose time. And there was
a lot of that. Through all classes.
Through all classes, guys running up front, guys running in the back, and and ultimately, we came to the GTP class. I feel like the best car ultimately won the race, and it was awesome to see Cadillac win, especially starting on pole. They put together a phenomenal race and didn't make any mistakes, and they were there when it counted. I mean, that's sometimes racing. You got to be fast, you got to be good, but sometimes you got to be lucky too. And they were lucky; they were in the right spot at the right time, and they got the win.
Yep, and it goes back to what AJ Foyt has his trademark saying, quote, I'd rather be lucky than fast. And at this race, Jack Aiken, he was fast. He definitely wasn't as fast as the Porsche and the Acura, but he was definitely lucky, and he pulled off that win.
Yeah, phenomenal race. So I don't have anything else to add on that, so I guess we'll just move right on into the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So Red Bull, as we mentioned in the last podcast, they're the team to beat this year. They've got the speed. They're their fastest car, leading the points, the constructors. So Sergio Perez starts on pole, and Max Verstappen had a drive shaft issue in qualifying and basically relegated him to starting 15th in the race. So it was really just the story of how could Verstappen race his way to the lead and be a contender in this race at the end. I think they were calling it by lap 25. He was going to be in second place, and I'm sure that's the lap that he finally made it up there. But Alonso, before the race even started, had an issue. Pretty much the whole story of the race was this incident here. We'll show the clip from the starting grid and where this whole thing kind of unraveled for him.
Alonso finds himself with a 5-second penalty, a procedural mistake with a big consequence. He's the lead car, but he's got a penalty hanging over him.
So essentially, you want to explain what happened right there.
Yeah, so if you go back to the video, you can see from Leclerc's onboard that Alonso wasn't within the starting area that is designated to these cars. And basically, if you're not within that starting area, FIA determines that as a advantage gain in any way or capacity. I don't really know. 2 feet, 3 feet over from the line, to me, doesn't really seem to be an advantage. I could be wrong. Most times I am, but this time around, I just don't think, especially with the next turn, which is a left-hander, how that would benefit him. So the penalty is a 5-second penalty, and so Alonso goes in to serve that penalty. After this, they don't get it appealed during the race. Yeah.
So essentially, he has to serve this 5-second penalty. They announced it, I believe, on lap 2. So at start of the race, Alonso jumps out to the lead off of turn 1, kind of dive bombs, gets a better start than Perez did, got the lead,
way better,
and he held it for about 4 laps. And it's just he had the pace. He had the pace. Perez finally got by him, coming down the front stretch with 4 to go. Ends up getting the lead, and Alonso for that entire run was able to maintain within a second lead, and he was able to use DRS, was able to keep that gap, and just kept the pace alive. And it was incredible, the race that he was putting on, in spite of having this penalty looming over his head. So then You also had Verstappen driving through the field. It was very entertaining. He was making moves and he wasn't really being super aggressive. He knew he had a fast car. Everybody around him knew he had a fast car and he was just setting them up one by one. You had Charles Leclerc. He started as well in a Ferrari. So he was also making his way through the field, but he was on a different tire strategy than everybody else. He was running the softs on the start. So he kind of got up to about 7th and kind of leveled out. And they start their stops around lap 17, I believe it was. Stroll, which is in the Aston as well, he makes his stop first. I guess they didn't do a very good pit stop because after he comes out from pits, both Ferraris actually leaped him in the running order, and I thought that was really interesting how he was able to lose 2 positions on track through that pit cycle. And a lap later, reliability issues for Aston Martin, and it was Stroll ends up. They never really announced during the race what it was, but he essentially they told him to pull the car over. He did. He guess he didn't pull it off the track enough. Safety car ends up getting deployed, and this really changed the race. At this point, it was like Verstappen was up to 4th, and it looked like he was going to have a chance to actually win the race from 15th, and it was going to be an incredible drive to do that. He was just going to have to get through the Mercedes and get through Alonso in the Aston, and then also get ahead of his teammate Perez, who was running a great race to this point. Then the controversy comes in. Safety car. This is what allows the pit sequence to happen. Alonso's team waits at the car for 5 seconds before they make their pit stop to assess their penalty. They make the pit stop, they get it back out, and then FIA goes over and basically says that they were reviewing the 5-second waiting period on his pit stop, that maybe they worked on the car before the 5 seconds were up. So now it turned into an interesting race. Verstappen eventually did get to second, I think by lap 25 like they projected, and Alonso was able to kind of maintain a pace that was reasonably fast, but he was basically racing against George Russell in the Mercedes, who was running 4th. He was trying to keep a 5-second gap over him just in case they did say there was something wrong with his penalty. The race ran pretty uneventful. Verstappen also reported some driveline issues around lap 38 of this race, what it kind of plagued him with his starting position. And so it looked like maybe Verstappen was going to take himself completely out of the championship lead with some mechanical issues or some reliability issues that we haven't seen out of Red Bull yet, really, this year. And ultimately, he was able to nurse it home, ran the fast lap at the end of the race. Perez got the win. Alonso finished 3rd. And that was what the podium looked like. And then the FIA comes out and gives Alonso a 10-second penalty and essentially relegates him to 4th. And this stood for about 7 hours. And then eventually they come back and they give Alonso his finishing position back. So I guess this leads me to my next point. What would be the reasoning why they couldn't just assess the 5-second penalty after the race? Why did it have to be during that pit stop?
So mainly it's all situational. When you have a penalty of the such of what Alonso was given, it was in early in the race. Most of the time, you can either elect to have it applied at the end of the race or during the race via pit stop. Sometimes that's just not possible. So if you're like 5 to go and you get a penalty for cutting the track or something, 5 seconds or contact or whatever, you're just better off taking that 5-second penalty at the end of the race, because with you driving through the pits, coming out of the pits, it's going to take a lot longer than 5 seconds. So they'll elect to do a 5-second penalty at the end of the race, which is completely within the rulebooks. And but at the beginning of the race, when Alonso got this penalty, of which we showed, they had plenty of time to overcome that, especially with the safety car coming out, to serve that 5-second penalty. And yeah, that's just it. It's all situational.
Okay. So apparently they didn't have enough footage to overturn the 5-second penalty it went for during the race. So essentially Alonso gets a spot back, which is good for Aston Martin. Being able to keep that 3rd place finish, that helps him in the constructors. With Which that's the one thing we're gonna look at real quick. We're gonna look at the F1 point standings right now. So Verstappen did end up running the fast lap of the race. He won last race as well. So he has a 44 point lead, or 44 points. He's got a 1 point lead over his teammate Perez, who has 43. Alonso's at 30. Then Russell's at 21. Sainz and Hamilton are tied at 20 points apiece. Red Bull's still ahead in the Constructors' Championship, and I don't think this is going to change all year long. They've got 87 points, and then Aston Martin and Mercedes are both tied at 38. So, essentially with Stroll having his reliability issues, it really hurt Aston Martin. Aston Martin would be in second place in the constructor standings right now. So that's got to be a big blow for Aston Martin.
Yeah, Aston Martin has such a competitive car. I think they're still trying to find the balance between performance and reliability. Kind of like what we're seeing, or what we saw with Verstappen this weekend with the driveline issues that he had. Knocked him out of qualifying. I don't even think he made a qualifying lap. Knocked him out of qualifying, had some drivability issues during the race, still drove up to P2, incredible drive. So I just don't know, because, really Aston Martin hasn't been in this position before. Battling for podiums week in and week out. I know we're only 2 races in, but I expect to see them high up on the podium for the rest of the year. But I think they're just pushing a lot for some R&D, or maybe, it could have been just as simple as an electrical issue. It had nothing to do with performance of the such, but in my mind, they didn't announce what the issue was. It was probably, something experimental they were working with, or, something that they were trying to conserve to try to not take a penalty at the end of the season, whether it be switching out gearboxes or engines or, any other thing that's regulated. So I just, nobody knows. Well, some people know. It's not me or anybody on the internet posted, but who knows, really? Who knows?
All right. I think that this championship battle between Perez and Verstappen is about to get exciting. This has given me some of that Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton championship battle type vibes here. You got 2 guys in the same team, very competitive. Perez, he's motivated. Finding out at the very end of the race, he wasn't even excited about the win as much as he was disappointed that Verstappen beat him on the last lap for the fast lap of the race to gain that extra point on him. I think he's highly motivated. Verstappen's back-to-back champion, and I think Perez he wants to prove something. He's got a fast car. I think he's out here on a mission. I feel like for him and his mindset is he's thinking championship or bust this year. I think.
Yeah. He even came out this past week and said that he's not going to return to Mexico. Has that championship, so we can see a lot of competitiveness out of that car within this year, possibly the next couple of years, dependent on how dominant Red Bull is.
And this brings me to my next point. I mean, Fernando Alonso, this guy is just incredible. Coming out of retirement for this to race for Aston Martin, and they're fast cars. They're the second fastest car in the paddock. He's keeping in touch with the 2 Red Bull cars in points, and just like we saw back with Rosberg and Hamilton during those championship fights, they eventually got into each other. They're so fast, they're so competitive that they eventually ran each other over, took each other out in a race. I mean, I could see if Alonso just continually finishes podium every race and eventually maybe gets lucky and gets a win when Perez and Verstappen make contact. I just don't think it's a far reach to think that Alonso might not potentially get into this championship fight.
Yeah, it could absolutely happen. I mean, we can see another Barcelona where Rosberg and Hamilton got in contact with each other in turn, taking each other both out of the race. We can see that at multiple races, and we can see, a possible Alonso P2 in the championships, and coming into the final race, just having to finish ahead of either Verstappen or Perez. And we just don't know I think that with R&D over the year, that Aston Martin can be there, especially with the budget that they have, and continually pushing forward with a legend behind the wheel, making suggestions on this car and pushing it forward and seeing where that car can go. I think that they have a great chance this year to do something spectacular.
I agree. I'm excited to see where this championship battle goes, and even the constructors. I think it's going to be pretty much down to the wire between Mercedes and Aston Martin all year for that second spot on the constructors championship. So
yeah, absolutely.
That pretty much summarizes the whole F1 race. Great race. Perez, 5th career win. I think we're going to see him on the top step of the podium many more times this season. And we're just see what happens with Red Bull, and then keep watching Alonso and see if he can keep this consistency going. Consistency is still key in racing. No matter how much you want to say winning's important, consistency is still just as important. So we'll see where they go from here.
And I hope that we haven't seen a change in Mercedes this year. They're still struggling. I think that again, with this team, with the amount of funds that they have, they can make some R&D through the year as well, and possibly get back up there. Especially with the role that George Russell is on with the struggle, quote unquote. He's on a roll too. He's very confident. He's ready to be on the podium. He had that podium hopes, I guess, out of Jeddah. But now it's probably just going to make him hungry, and he's going to come back and try to get Mercedes back on the podium. And I have a couple more things to touch on, especially who's going to win the midfield battle. I'd like to think that we have 4 teams going for the top spot, with Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston, and Red Bull. I don't know if that's even a thing considered or a special case, but I do think that 4 teams have a chance to win a race this year, and it's those 4 teams. So with that being said, the midfield battle, Alpine is still rocking that. They're doing a great job week in and week out. Pierre Gasly, again, my pick for the best driver in F1 right now. He can get in anything. He's like the Ryan Blaney of F1, right? Like he can drive anything. Dump trucks, buses, Silverados. They drive like crap, So I think that Gasly at the helm of that seat, with Ocon next to him, if they can keep some good communications between them, that they can definitely win that midfield battle. And that's all I got.
Alrighty. So with that being said, we'll move right on into the Atlanta NASCAR races this weekend. The truck race, the FR8 208, it was pretty lackluster. Really the biggest talking points in this race was the Tricon issues. They've got a 5-truck team. This weekend in stage 1, you had Tanner Gray, who's got lots of experience, been driving for this team for a couple years now, ends up taking out Lane Riggs, who's making his first start with the team. Just basically stuck his nose in a situation on his teammate that just there was no need for it in that part of the stage. Work with your teammate, and essentially it just wiped out 2 of the Tricon cars, right, or Tricon trucks right there. Really, the fast truck was Eckes all day. He ends up in stage 1, gets mired back in track position after the end of the stage 1 because ThorSport trucks, they went with they forwent the pit stops at the end of the first stage, and it was Crafton, Majeski, and Rhodes running 1 through 3 pretty much the entire second stage. Crafton ended up winning it. And really, after that second stage, we got a restart, and Corey Heim, another Tricon truck, ran into the back of Nick Sanchez, who had a terrible restart. I don't know if he missed a shift. He said the car just died on him, so I don't know if that was driver error or if that was the truck error. I don't know. It sounded like he was passing the blame off on it being the truck, but it could have been driver error. He is a rookie, so who knows on that one? They'd have to look at the data to figure out that for sure. And then later on, the fourth Tricon truck of Dean Thompson ends up blowing a tire in the third stage, and it basically Tricon put 5 trucks on the track, and 4 of the 5 finished with a DNF. It was just a poor showing for Tricon, poor showing for Toyota in general. And really at the end of the race, you had Jack Wood with KBM, you had Eckes, and then you had Nick Sanchez with a KBM Rev Racing truck. Those were your contenders for the win. Eckes had the best truck and ends up winning the race. Basically a great drive on his part. That puts him in the championship lead. I would consider him a championship favorite at this point with the consistency he's had. I mean, he's just, from last year to this year, he's just made huge strides as a driver, and he just ran a phenomenal race. You got anything to add to that?
Yeah, just on the whole turning teammates deal, I know that these guys are lower tier level. Or not lower, I shouldn't say that. I should say lower tiered series drivers. But some of the stuff we witnessed during that truck race was junior motorsports type kind of stuff that we're talking about. And it was just disappointing to see. Just disappointing.
It seems like we're just having a lot of that this year between junior motorsports, colleague, then you have Tricon this week having the issues. It's like teammates are just running each other over, and I think it just as if I think it's just a culture change in NASCAR in general, where these guys just don't care. Everybody's out there on an island they're working for themselves, and there's no patience anymore. Like, these races used to have patience to get to the end of these races. I don't know, maybe it's something to do with stage racing. Maybe it's stage racing that causes these drivers to just not have any respect, because you're basically running 3 short stints in a truck race. You have 3 short segments to make it to the front at the end, and you're not having enough time to run laps and play strategy and cycle the fast trucks to the front, and you just have teammates running each other over on a consistent basis this year.
Yeah. Yep.
Alrighty. So that it's a truck race. We got the Xfinity race. I mean, I come on here last week and just brag about how great the Xfinity series is and how great of a show they put on, and I still think that it's the best series in the world right now. I still think the drivers are amazing. They're on a fantastic show, but I mean, this weekend you had stage 1, just cautions the whole time, and Sheldon Creed ended up winning it over Austin Hill. But really, there was no green flag runs. The first 2 stages, you had 9 laps of green flag run in a consecutive run. 9 laps of green flag. Stage 2, same thing, just all cautions. Kligerman ends up winning stage 2. So essentially, in this race, I would have said that Hill, Kligerman, Alfredo, one of those 3 cars were going to win this race. Those were the best 3 cars all day. They showed it. They were the only ones to be able to make moves on the bottom when nobody else was able to. The bottom was just non-existent really all weekend. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
Kligerman
with
and
all series.
All series. The whole weekend was just for Atlanta was just no inside line. There was just no progression there. And get down to the end of the race. I guess in stage 2, it might have been stage 1. We had just theatrics, just absolute amazing theatrics. I think Josh Williams, this guy needs t-shirts or something made. I think he needs to get his own podcast. He needs to go on any type of platform right now, because this dude is getting traction. And I mean, I guess we'll play the clip from the race. I mean, it was just wild. And I mean, you can't fault him. You can't fault him. You can't fault his team. You put him in a box, and essentially this is what happens. So, yeah, we'll let the clip run.
And he's currently running 4th, but that's Josh Williams, who was asked, as I told you, to go to the garage for extending the caution. The debris came off his car. He has parked his number 92 at the start-finish
It
line.
literally makes me think of
He's walking
Eric Cartman from South Park. You know,
to the garage looking
you know
for
what?
an exit.
Screw you guys, I'm going home. And that's what he did. They basically told him to park his car. They said that he I guess it's in the rule book, if a caution has come out, your car's damaged, and you cause another caution right after with debris, they have all the right to park you. And Josh Williams, it was a race with this type of racing gives a team like his team a chance to run up front and maybe get a good finish or a good outcome and kind of showcase his ability, his team's talent, and showcase his sponsors that he struggles to get on a weekly basis to put that car out on the track. And from no fault of his own, gets damage. It's really cold, so Bear Bond doesn't stick very well. And he goes back out there and loses his Bear Bond, causes a debris caution, and NASCAR basically said, get off the track. You're done, bud. You're done. And so he, in the most OG legendary move of all time, parks this thing on the front stretch, waves to the fans, and just walks away. And, put the sunglasses on. I mean, this guy is just hero. He's a hero. He's a hero for everybody. Summarize the whole day right there in that clip.
Yep. So first off, we could talk about how BS of a call that is. Because for small teams to come out to a racetrack, to qualify, to compete, to buy the tires, to have the crew come out, to have the car driven there, to have all the equipment there is no small amount of money. And when you're asking, for more starts in these series, NASCAR they're sending cars home because there's too many Xfinity cars showing up for their allotted car count, right? Which is a whole different aspect of this whole thing. But besides the point, these guys are still showing up. This example, Josh Williams had a brand new sponsor on his car. He goes out, gets collected in some crap that he didn't even start, comes in, gets it fixed, excuse me, and then comes out. It's 40 degrees out, and the Bear Bond's not sticking. It flies off, and then NASCAR says, done. And that's the biggest sack of crap I've ever heard come out of NASCAR. This is almost worse than the ghost cautions we were experiencing in the 2012 era, when they were trying to do things to keep the racing tight, or whatever you want to call it. This is literally driving competitors away from the sport, driving sponsors away from the sport, making it to where the drivers get fed up, leave their cars at the start-finish line, walking away, waving at the fans, and saying peace. Wow. I don't even know where this thought process comes from NASCAR. It is not a good look. We're trying to attract people to come into the sport, like the Chicago race that we're going to be doing here later in the year. It's going to be a high-profile race. It's going to have a lot of high-profile people there. But we're turning competitors away. What are we doing? This is not a good look. We can't be doing this. First sin that NASCAR did was decrease the amount of cars that can race. And now they're sending cars home because of Bear Bond not sticking in 40-degree weather. This is ridiculous. This is so ridiculous and such a bad look on the sport. I don't even think NASCAR is ashamed of it.
No.
To be honest with you.
I mean, and especially considering they made a great call finding Hamlin for his comments. I mean, that was a great call, finding him. You should not be basically admitting fault or being guilty or basically going out to a public audience saying you're wrecking people. That's a bad look for the sport, saying stuff like that. Yeah. And then you go around and do another bad look, and then you go around and after you make the right call and make the wrong call with kicking him out. I mean, thank goodness they had the camera on him and they got his car in the picture to give sponsors some airtime. I mean, this is a type of move that could end his career. I mean, ultimately,
yeah, absolutely, it could absolutely access sponsorship. I think that's not going to be the case though. He got a lot of publicity off of this. It could be a good thing. We don't know yet, but I just think that with that one move, NASCAR just really showed their position on not really caring about the competitors.
Right.
The good thing about all of this, in the messed up situation that it is Denny Hamlin came over on Twitter and said that he would pay his fine, which is awesome. It's showing support for other tiers of the sport, especially, from top down, from Cup Series drivers saying that to Xfinity drivers. Again, a bad look for NASCAR.
Very bad look for NASCAR. All right, so now this brings us to the final stage. They finally got it figured out. They were not having any more cautions. We essentially set the caution record in the truck and Xfinity races. Stage 3 in the Xfinity race, I mean, it was really good racing. You had Kligerman and Alfredo trying to come back from the back. You had Hill kind of controlling the line like he always does at these super speedways. He is just so underrated. I believe that Austin Hill is the most cup-ready driver in any lower tier series out there right now. This guy, if he's not cup racing next year, somebody has to pick him up. Somebody has to. We got guys in the Cup Series. There's a couple of them that don't really deserve where they're racing right now, and I feel like you put a competitive car, this guy is going to win races. He is showing it. He showed it in the Truck Series. He showed it in the Xfinity Series now, and this dude is he needs a Cup ride next year. He's the most Cup ready guy we got, and we need to promote him, prop him up. This guy is unreal. But
yeah, I think also with saying the most Cup ready driver, the most powerhouse team right now that is struggling so bad is SHR. You got Kevin Harvick coming out of that car next year, going into retirement. He is ready. Austin Hill makes that jump from RCR to Stuart Haas and does something. It could be the turnaround of that program. If I was SHR right now, I'd be on it.
Yeah, I would be calling him right now, and I would be trying to snag him from RCR. I would, because I mean, SHR needs something. They've been trying these younger drivers, and you're losing Almirola, you're losing Harvick. You've had Custer not work out. Suarez obviously didn't work out, but it might not have been the right situation for him. You need to take a chance like this. You got Briscoe, and I think you need to go snag Austin Hill. I think that's a good point. I didn't really think about that one. All right, so now we get to the end of this race. Parker Kligerman is making a run. We get a green-white checker. He's in position. It looks like it's going to be a race between Kligerman and Hill. Kligerman, I believe, had a little bit faster of a car, personally, but Austin Hill is just so amazing at these super speedways. It's just hard to beat him. But we'll just let the last lap run, and then we'll make our take on it.
See the white flag this time around. 1 lap to go. Sponsored by Credit One Bank. Your leader is Austin Hill.
Right now, Parker's got to be looking for the run. He's going to have to back up to the guys in front of him. He's got to figure out what car to back up to try to get the run on Austin Hill. Right now, Austin's got it blocked.
I mean, Kligerman here was able to do what nobody was able to do all day. By himself, essentially.
Here it comes on the top. He's going to get to his outside.
Parker Kligerman going high. Help from Brett Moffitt. Daniel Hemrick shoving Austin Hill down low. Sideways. Can they hang on? Austin Hill wins once again. He goes back to back here in Atlanta as they crash across the start-finish line. I feel like he was sideways.
I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? If you're Daniel, what are you doing? We're gonna have an awesome finish. The two best cars coming down for a drag race to save this race. This race had nothing. This would have saved it. We'd have had one of these memorable Atlanta finishes ruined by Daniel Hemrick. What are you doing? You wreck a guy for second? For second?
Yeah. For second. That's the craziest part about all of this. Is Daniel Hemrick is so desperate for a second place finish, running third, he wrecks second instead of helping or helping anywhere else. I mean, he had the perfect opportunity just to finish and keep a clean car. Look at all the cars that he wrecked behind him. All that monies that lower tier drivers have. I mean, we have Brett Moffitt who was there. Ryan Sieg, Brennan Poole, Kligerman. I don't really consider Kligerman to be on a powerhouse team. I mean, like, why? Why are we doing this? Again, we could have had a great Atlanta finish, something that could have saved this weekend for the Xfinity Series, and it's ruined by one person being stupid.
I mean, a bust of a champion. I mean, if he plays Hale or if he plays Peckerman, I think he still might finish second. I mean, worst case scenario, you're finishing third. Like,
with a clean car.
With a clean car. I mean, what are you doing? And it was the most unavoidable, or the most avoidable thing to happen all weekend. It was just no reason for it. He's a champion. Champions don't do this stuff. Champions do not do this stuff. But that's 15 a champion in a colleague car make a boneheaded decision. And Daniel Hemrick is a nominee for the bonehead of the week. We're going to put that poll up after the stream, obviously. But that is a nominee. That is just uncalled for, ridiculous. And I mean, that would have been the saving grace of the weekend for NASCAR in Atlanta. And it just was ruined. Absolutely ruined. All right. So that, like I said, Austin Hill ends up winning, as you saw in the footage. Phenomenal race. This dude, get him in the Cup Series. He's ready. He's ready. Championship favorite by a landslide right now. I don't think anybody's close. This now leads us to the Am Better Health 400 for the Cup Series. Before the weekend started, Kyle Busch failed pre-race inspection twice, or more than twice, I guess is what they call it. So that basically suspended or eliminated his car chief for the weekend. So already a rough start for Busch. Logano ends up winning pole, and we had 8 Fords, 1 through 8, qualifying. Like, as much as we've bagged on Ford and how much we've gotten on Ford being terrible this year, they went out and proved us all wrong. I mean, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. I told you last week, don't take Ford. Don't put your eggs in that basket. It's not worth it. Take a Hendrick Chevy. And we got the opposite here. I mean, Ford showed out in this race.
Yeah, and they qualified good, and they held that top 5, top 8 good as well. They didn't really give it up either. Yeah. Pretty much the whole race. I mean, yeah, we saw some Chevrolets up there, but the whole race, I mean, Ford was on it this weekend.
Yeah. So essentially, stage 1, we had really no action. We had 1 caution on lap 10. Bubba Wallace was fighting handling issues, lost control off of turn 2, got into the wall. Pretty much ended his day. He was laps down with damage. It just not competitive for the rest of the day. Stage 1 ends with Logano winning, pretty uneventful. Essentially, the Penske cars ran perfect as a team, and they were not going to be denied when they were in the front 3 spots, and that's how stage 1 ended. Stage 2, same thing. Penske ended up cycling to the front, and Cindric ended up snagging Logano for the stage win. But during that second stage, we had a green flag pit cycle, which ended up costing Blaney stage points in stage 2, and it looked like it was going to be the detriment that ended his race. Atlanta, they reconfigured the track 2 years ago, or before last season, and this season they make an adjustment for pit road entry. They move it to the backstretch going into turn 3, which I brought this up right when I saw it. I knew this was going to be a problem, and luckily it didn't play out to be a problem. But the biggest deal here was that essentially we see it every week. A lot of times we've seen it with Keselowski in the past, where he'll stay out and run the stage all the way out to the end and bank on a caution, trap a bunch of leaders a lap down, and hopefully catch a caution at the right time, trap a bunch of them a lap down, and be able to gain all that track position and narrow the field down for guys that he's got to beat for a win. And it's worked out for him a lot of times in his career. I was just waiting for one of these guys to essentially play the long game. Play the long game, not pit until the last possible minute, trap 2 cars, or trap basically the whole field down a lap, or 2 laps at Atlanta, actually, because of the distance it takes to go through the road. So the biggest flaw of this race would have been, let's say Christopher Bell was the last guy to, if say he, right the second he is the commitment line. The whole field's 2 laps down. Caution comes out instantly. You've trapped the whole field 2 laps down. You're already on pit road. Your catch you. You're gonna have the whole field 2 laps down. Best that the whole field can do is they can't even take a wave around now, because now the pace car's caught you, and as the leader, you're not gonna pit again because you just made your pit stop. The whole field is 2 laps behind you. Essentially, unless there is 2 cautions, I guess one of them would get the lucky or the free pass to be 1 lap down. So essentially, another caution comes out, he will get back on the lap. So it'd be like a 2-car race. I mean, this is a major flaw in the system. Thankfully, it never played out that way. But in the future, this is a real possibility of ruining a race. We could have a guy win a race 2 laps ahead of the field. I mean,
no.
Do we want this as NASCAR fans? Do we want this as racing fans? Does NASCAR want this? This is something that needs to be fixed. This is a real possibility of happening.
Yeah, I think this is just a huge oversight, something they did not think about. And it's also, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Look what we're doing to Autoclip Speedway. It is a great track. We're demolishing it. We're making another short track. Why? Why? We have such good races there. Every year, I mean, there's all the highlight reels that you can, and Chicagoland. I mean, just look at all the highlight reels we have on YouTube of these cars and the finishes that they can produce. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, it's we got a whole lot to unpack on Atlanta. Let's finish the race out here. Essentially, the first major wreck happened in stage 3. Harvick was in front of Chastain. Chastain, the aero package essentially wrecked Harvick here. He got all the air packed onto his rear spoiler, and it made that car light, and that thing just went right around, right in front of the field. It looked like Chastain took him out, but it was just the manipulation of the air. It took Harvick out, wiped out 5-6 competitive cars in this race. That kind of changed the complexion of it, because at that point, we have a pit stop cycle, and Almirola decided to not take tires. So he went fuel only, which I thought was strange. And then we get another caution with like 2 laps later. So Almirola essentially had not pitted since the green flag stops midway through stage 2. He's on like 70 plus lap old tires. Like, he's on a bold strategy out here, going with no tires. He was planning on stretching this race out for 120 lap old tires. I don't understand where the thought process was here, but going 120 laps on one set of tires? I mean, have you seen that? Like, is that a thing?
No.
It's
not a thing
right here.
It's a thing in the IMSA series where tires are as hard as the stone that Jesus walked on, but it doesn't happen in NASCAR. We don't have those type of tires. We've never had those type of tires. And I don't even know what the thought process was behind a Drew Blinkenshire Ford, whatever his name is, whatever. It doesn't matter now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter now.
Because the dude didn't win a race. I mean, you're never going to win a race on, 3 billion-year-old rock tire. I don't know. This is just... When I saw that happening, and I'm pretty sure I texted you during the race, Jay, and I was like, how is this guy going to stay up in the front with this old of tires? Everybody else is... And I also understand that clean air was key with these cars and the aero package that it brought. But in the end, we saw the product of that, and he was the only one to try it. I guess if you're going to try it, go all out. If you're not, just stay on strategy with everybody else. But
I mean, it just seemed like desperation. It was like maybe he knows something that we don't. I mean, let's say it plays out and he's able to make 120 laps on this set of tires and wins the race. We're sitting here looking like idiots. Everybody's looking like an idiot. Like,
maybe, but then we saw what happened to Harvick.
Yeah, and he was on fairly good tires, so it's like,
and then you exaggerate that by how old the tires are, right? And then you just find yourself in the same situation.
Yeah,
in which we did find ourselves in. So I I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a crew chief, so
It was just a bold strategy. Essentially he ends up blowing a tire. I mean, no shocker there. In front of the field, takes out Larson. So essentially, I picked Hendrick. I thought Hendrick was going to win this race, and we had 3 of the 4 Hendrick cars out before we even got within 50 laps to go in this race. It was like Ford dominated. Hendrick was up there, competitive, and then just all get wiped out. So Keselowski basically assumes the lead after the whole Almirola tire debacle, and leads the whole way pretty much to the end. Like the inside line, as we said earlier, just was non-existent. You had the 3 Penske cars lined up on the bottom, the 3 best cars in the field, and they could not make that inside line work at all. If it wasn't for the outside on the last lap, mixing it up a little bit to allow Logano to get that run on Keselowski's winning this race. Logano's not even getting a chance at him. So the fact that Logano was able to get back up there, he had the best car. He was the most deserving driver to win this race. But just the fact that him and Blaney have the 2 fastest cars with Cindric behind him, and they could not make any headway on the bottom. They could get just right up to the second place guy on the outside, but they couldn't make a run at Keselowski if they wanted to.
no.
So
Thanks
I
to
mean,
the aero package.
the aero package is terrible. The
This
track is
terrible
terrible.
aero package. The track is terrible. This whole combination was terrible, and it made for a horrible weekend of racing for NASCAR.
I think Justin Allgaier, after he wrecked an Xfinity race, summed it up perfectly. He said, "This is an embarrassment for NASCAR," and I agree. We took Atlanta Motor Speedway, which has historically been, when all the other tracks, mile and a halves, have been putting on terrible shows, you can always count on Atlanta to provide. The old pavement, the way it was configured after the first reconfiguration in 97, I believe it was. Like, from once the track started to wear out, we've had just amazing finishes. This track has been consistently the most reliable track for putting on a great show, regardless of what aero package, car, tire, whatever we brought there, it was going to put on a great show. NASCAR and SMI decided to absolutely go a different direction. Something that works, we're going to just change it 180. We're going to do something that nobody wanted, nobody asked for, and nobody even deserved to see. If NASCAR doesn't refund the tickets for anybody that went onto the race on Saturday to sit through the cold to watch that pathetic show that this track put on, that is just fraud. NASCAR needs to refund these tickets to these people. This is absolutely ridiculous. This track is not going to ever. It's a fresh repaint. I think it's going to get worse the older the surface gets, because these cars are already out of control. They're going too fast. They're in too tight of racing quarters. It's a 2-lane track when they're racing
At
side by
best.
side, but the inside
best.
line has nothing. You have nothing.
Yeah.
You've
It's-
seen the best cars on the bottom can't even make a run on the on the inside.
If anything, it's just like a Texas 2.0. I mean,
But worse.
single file worse. I mean, it could. Yeah, absolutely. But we're seeing single file racing. We're not seeing any competitiveness. The bottom lane is straight dog water. The top lane is the only way to go. It was like, where's the competitiveness? We didn't see it at all through all the series. You know, sometimes even the trucks at a terrible racetrack, they can make a show out of it, right? But then you go to Xfinity, they kind of have a same draft package as historically as the Cup cars. But this year it's just I don't even know. It's so sad to see this track to see where it is now. It was such a good track.
I mean, the
It's so
amount of
great.
money that they put into the project is just, it was an astronomical number.
Yeah.
The track just does not do good at cleaning up these cautions. We had like 60 laps stage 1 and 2, maybe is 80 laps in Xfinity race stage 1 and 2. And I'm pretty sure 85% of that was caution laps. I've seen my local short track with way less equipment, way less resources, way less manpower, be able to clean up an accident quicker than they could at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This is a professional league that can't even get their simple thing is cleaning up a track right. And then the oversight on the pit road entry What are we doing? What are we doing with turn 3 entry? I've just pointed out my entire flaw in this system, and it's going to happen. If we race here another 5 years with the way that it is set up now, we're going to see a race where the winner's going to be a lap ahead at his closest competitor at a super speedway event. Like, what are we doing?
I think what this really boils down to is I think the U.S. government had a hand in all of this, because they're known for just throwing money at stuff and then just making it worse, and I think that's just what happened here.
I mean, we can equate it to that.
terrible.
I mean,
This is good enough for government work right here.
I mean, I think this was the first race in the last 10, 15 years. Maybe even long. I don't even know. I've never woke up on a Sunday morning not wanting to watch a NASCAR race. Like, I generally just did not want to watch. I saw what we had on the Friday and Saturday, and I mean, the race was just garbage. There was just nothing there. Like, the best cars ran up front, and that was it. And then when they got in the back, they couldn't make it back up. I mean, it was really track position. And maybe that's why Almirola decided to try to go to 120 laps on tires, because they realized how terrible of a product they had. And I think anybody that thinks this was a good race is either racing ignorant or they're getting their pockets lined by somebody to say it was a good race, because it was a terrible race. Terrible
Or their
product.
Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, Stevie Wonder and Helen Keller over here predicting or watching this race. I mean, they're not.
Yeah.
They're not, is what the point is. This race was terrible. This track is terrible. I think NASCAR should take the money that they make for the next 3 years and just demolish this thing to the ground. They ruined Atlanta. If you're going to reconfigure this track, they should have just stuck with the pattern and the layout they had, or they should have went back to the way it was in the mid-90s when they put on great shows. Atlanta is ruined. They did it to Texas, they did it to Atlanta, and now I'm afraid it's going to happen to Auto Club. We need to try to manufacture things that don't need to be manufactured. We've had these racetracks, and they've been consistent on the schedule, and they put on great shows. You don't fix things that aren't broken. It wasn't broken. It needed a repave. It didn't need a reconfiguration.
Nope. I agree.
So, I mean, it's sad. It's sad to see what Atlanta Motor Speedway has become, and it ain't going anywhere for the near future. We're going to have 2 races a year for the next 20 years on this configuration, and it's just going to gradually get worse. I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. I honestly hope I am wrong about this. I really do.
NASCAR is 2 for 2 right now with ruining tracks. So, with that track record, we're probably not wrong, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, at this point...
And it's just a matter of time before we all realize it again.
Yeah, if NASCAR ever decides to do something to Darlington or Talladega, I'm going to be furious. The best 2 tracks on the circuit, if they touch them, I'm going to be very mad. So, just leave Darlington and Talladega alone.
We'll have to get Trey Parker to make another NASCAR episode.
Yes. Yes. All right, so... I mean, unless you have anything else to add on that, that's pretty much. I just had to get that off my chest.
You pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It's not what we grew up racing or watching. We saw some really good racing with the Gen 4 cars, with the car of tomorrow, with the Gen 6 cars. These new cars, I don't know about them. I think they're not my favorite. The draft package that gets announced or changed weekly doesn't help that case. The tracks that they just keep ruining, I don't know. I just think it's dumb. I think it's stupid. The way that NASCAR is trying to modernize this sport. We're going to a Chicago street race instead of going to Chicagoland.
Or going to even Road America. I mean, it's
Road America.
It's fine road course. Like, there's no reason to be going and racing in Chicago. There's no reason.
Why can't we go to Portland International Raceway in Portland, Oregon, and go do something there, kind of like what IndyCar did? Just to appease the Pacific Northwest fans.
Yes,
and
I mean that would be my closest track
besides
Vegas if we had something in Portland. I would definitely would that'd be the only reason I'd go to Portland is to watch a NASCAR race there, and I guarantee that's a market
go build
they
an
haven't
oval
tapped
track.
yet.
Go build an oval track in Seattle. Go build an oval track in
Southern Idaho. There's a ton of land out here. Boise's developing. Like, let's do something
Boise.
different.
You can do Boise.
Let's do something different.
Lewiston.
We don't need
Lane.
to tear down tracks or reconfigure existing tracks. Let's just build more. Like, if you're gonna
take that money
and
that
the
you
time
spent,
and effort, exactly.
Take that money that you spent to screw up Atlanta and go build another place somewhere else to appease a fan base that you haven't been appeasing for the past 30 years.
I agree. It's just, I feel like NASCAR's at a crossroads here. We don't really have superstars, like, to a level that we had in the mid 2000s to the mid 2010s. We don't have the right car. Like I said last week, if Cup Series could adopt something similar to what the Xfinity Series runs. I mean, the Xfinity Series, those cars are just awesome. They put on an amazing show. If we put Cup guys in those on a weekly basis and ran that as the Cup Series, the product would be just so much better. But I mean,
give them a low downforce 800 horsepower package and just let them race.
100%. I think that it would be way more enjoyable than what we got. So, I think we should probably just end it there. I think we could go on this for another hour and just not really even get it all off our chest. But so Logano wins the race. Like I said, last lap pass. Keselowski, you wanted to bring up RFK.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, how Brad Keselowski has went into Roush Fenway, turned that program around in a way that benefited everybody. And now they're competing for wins. They are competitive. They are up there every week. Brad Keselowski did not go to that organization and go, change. He went and listened to the crew. He went and listened to the management crew. He made small changes to gain confidence, to gain momentum, to the changes that needed to happen, and so everything flowed. Not only has he done a task that not a lot of people would take, but he has flown with it. I mean, he is that team is soaring right now. We haven't seen Roush Fenway in this form in God knows how many years. I mean, it's so awesome to see Roush back up there again. Because I remember Car of Tomorrow days. They were contenders every week with Kenseth, with Biffle, with Reagan. Well, sometimes
Edwards.
Reagan. I don't. Edwards. They were a powerhouse, and it's so nice. It's so cool to see that again. This is Brad Keselowski's turnaround. He used to be one of the most hated drivers on the circuit. And I'll admit it, I didn't like him either. I think that he just liked to complain a lot. He had some of the best equipment he was racing in. And all you hear out of this dude is whining, crying, blah. Him and Joey Logano just kind of fed off of each other. And they got some pretty colorful nicknames off of that, of which I won't say who they are. But I think that what Brad's done has painted him as almost a hero for Roush. And I think that deserves a lot of spotlight, a lot of attention. He has done a phenomenal job with that team, with Jack Roush, with Chris Buescher. And I think that Brad's going to get that win, and it's going to be over. We're going to see RFK taking checkered flags a lot more.
Yeah, I think their full potential has not even been close to reach yet, or
not even close.
Not even close. I think we're gonna see them winning a lot here in the near future. Watch out, and Ford in general. I think we're gonna see Ford win a lot more races from here on out. I think they just needed a race like this with some confidence, and I think they've got it now. And I think just watch out for Ford in these next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean they got Ryan Blaney. So, I mean, that dude can drive a dump truck.
Ryan Blaney is the poster child.
Straight out
Ford.
of the dump truck factory.
That dump truck factory.
Put that guy in a freaking cat going into a lithium mine. He'll get out of there in record time.
All right, so now this brings me to my points, or to the Cup Series point standings. Logano now is the points leader at 177. Bell is moved into second. He's at 176. Chastain's in third at 172. Blaney is moved up to fourth at 161, and Keselowski's up to fifth at 160.
Nice.
So,
Yes.
I mean, you could see all the Fords are right up there in points now. Now that the Hendrick cars with their 100-point penalty, now that that's been instituted, now the Fords are really climbing up to the top of the standings. Also, Corey LaJoie, 14th in points right now, 21 above the cut line. Just that's incredible. I mean, it's gonna tell us more once we get into the summer months, but I mean, right now, starting the season off that well is just impressive.
It is.
And
He's
then
doing a great job wheeling that thing too.
Oh yeah. We'll talk about him more here in a second. And then also Eric Jones, 20th in points. He's 20 back. That's a shocker to me. I thought he'd be a contender for the top 15 in points all year. But it's still early. Maybe they'll turn it around. They've got new ownership over there, Jimmy Johnson. He's got a rookie teammate. Maybe they're just gonna take him a minute to get that momentum rolling again. And then Larson. I mean, 32nd in points after that big 100-point penalty and then a DNF this weekend. Him and Byron, they're both really low in points right now. The only reason I didn't bring up Byron is because he's got the 2 wins. He's making the playoffs regardless at this point. But Larson doesn't have that win. He doesn't have that security blanket right now. And he's in a deep hole, 59 points from the cut line. So there's a lot of work to be done there with Larson. He's capable of winning. I think he will win, but points-wise, it's not looking good for him. This brings us to a new segment that I want to introduce every week. Kind of mowing it around a little bit. I think we should do a driver of the week. I'll put a poll up so you guys can have your input and say as well on the channel. But I think our nominees are Kevin Magnussen for Haas in the F1 race, getting points for Haas. Like I said, finishing 10th. That's huge for Haas. That's a huge momentum builder. I think that's something that he needed as a driver, something the team needed, something maybe they could build on, and maybe they can get points more consistently as the season goes on.
And especially with their new team sponsor that they have this year, MoneyGram, it is a great look to get a new team sponsor scoring points pretty much right out of the gate. Great look, great drive by Kevin, getting around Sonoda at the end. Absolutely constitutes a driver of the week.
Our second nominee will be Anthony Alfredo, racing for BJ McLeod Motorsports and Xfinity Series. Like I said, him, Kligerman, Hill, 3 best cars all race. Alfredo was one of those guys that he could literally make the bottom work by himself. And once he had the lead, he could control the race. And I mean, the result wasn't there that he was probably hoping for or what he probably deserved. But phenomenal race. I mean, he showed his talent on Saturday. He's got a lot of talent. And I think if he gets in the right situations, I mean, watch out. And also, they announced that he's going to be racing cup races for BJ McLeod with Live Fast this season as well. So, I mean, it's looking up for Alfredo, and he had a phenomenal race this weekend.
Yeah, he definitely shows some strength, for sure.
And then the last one, I mean, Corey LaJoie finishing 4th. Atlanta this seems to be his track. He doesn't run super great at Daytona and Talladega super speedways, but for some reason, he's got this track figured out. I mean, when everybody else doesn't, nobody else can make up ground, nobody else can make moves. LaJoie, right there, top 5. Should have won it last year. Was in position to win it this year if they could have developed some type of run. If the track was any better, I mean, he could have potentially won this race. So phenomenal drive by LaJoie. Yeah.
Again, this year, great drive by LaJoie. He should already have a win here from last year. But yeah, there's no denying in the equipment that he's in. A P finish like that is like almost Daytona win right there.
Right. All right, and now our infamous segment, the Bonehead of the Week, the final segment of the show. First of all, the top of the list, we're going to go with Jaminet and Albuquerque on the final lap of in the final 18 minutes of the 12 hours at Sebring, making contact, essentially taking them all out of contention and handing the win over to Cadillac. I think you put the blame on both drivers here. I think they're both boneheads in this situation and ultimately cost them. So that's nominee number 1. Nominee number 2, which is the one I'm taking, Obviously, for many reasons we got into it. Daniel Hemrick taking out Parker Kligerman. A moment that could have salvaged this weekend for NASCAR. And absolutely just basically put the cherry on top for this awful weekend. And essentially wrecked Parker Kligerman for second.
Second place. Second place. Don't forget that. He's so desperate for second place, he's willing to wreck. And wreck everybody else behind him.
The biggest hack champion in NASCAR.
That was such a hack move right there. I mean, we've been talking about hacks for like the past year. Denny Hamlin has. This is the definition of hack right here. This is terrible look, terrible move, terrible look for Colleague. I don't even know. I'm going to stop ranting. Just go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then the last one will be Almirola. I'm not going to put this on Almirola. I'm going to put this on the 10 team, Stewart Haas Racing, crew chief, spotter, Almirola. I don't know who's to blame, but taking trying to finish a race on tires that are 120 laps old, that will certifiably nominate you as a bonehead. So, I mean, you guys vote. We got great options to choose from. And with that being said, unless you have anything else to add?
I just make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. All comments that you guys put on any of our videos, our lives or shorts or anything of the such, we will reply to. Try to come in and interact with us. We'd love to talk with you. Just make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes, we love the feedback. Just keep bringing it on. We will, like you said, we'll respond. Any feedback is positive feedback in my opinion. This is kind of our new streaming schedule for here on out. We're going to do it every Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time every evening. We're going to kind of do our race recaps every Monday and then our race previews on every Thursday. So we'll catch you again for episode 4 on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. But for now, this is going to be Jay.
Tom.
And we are the Dega Boys, and this has been the Full Send Half Mast Podcast, episode 3. Thanks for watching, guys.
Peace out.